The red paint didn't just stain the leather of my suitcases, it bled into the concrete of the driveway, a permanent marker of the moment my mother decided I was no longer her daughter, but a target. Most people think a family's collapse happens in a whisper, behind closed doors. Mine happened through a bullhorn at 6:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, orchestrated by the woman who used to tuck me in at night. "Attention, everyone!" My father's voice boomed, amplified and distorted. "We're finally kicking out our 28-year-old deadbeat daughter." I stood there, still wearing my work blazer, drywall dust from a 1920s theater restoration site still clinging to my sleeves. I was an architectural lighting designer. I spent my days calculating how to bring light into dark spaces, but as I watched my mother drag a dripping paintbrush across my life's work, writing the word pathetic in thick crimson letters over my drafting case, I realized I had been blind to the darkness in my own home. Neighbors slowed their SUVs, phones were out, the blue light of recording screens flickered like digital vultures. My sister Brooke was live streaming, her face twisted into a performative pout for her followers. "She owes us $16,000, my mother screamed into the bullhorn, her eyes wide with a terrifying kind of triumph. "She hasn't contributed a thing in 3 years, a worthless leech." I didn't cry. In lighting design, there's a concept called glare. When light is so intense, it obscures the object it's supposed to illuminate. That moment was pure glare. It was meant to blind me, to break me, to make me disappear into the shame. But they forgot one thing about people who work in restoration. We know how to look beneath the surface. We know how to find the structural failure. "This isn't over," I said, my voice a low frequency they couldn't hear through their noise. "You're going to regret tonight." They laughed, a jagged, ugly sound that echoed off the neat suburban houses. Before I tell you what I found 3 weeks later and why my parents' kingdom didn't just crack, it imploded, I have to ask you, what time is it where you are, and have you ever realized the people supposed to protect you were actually the ones stripping you for parts? I spent that first night in a motel off Independence Boulevard. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner. I sat on the edge of a bed with polyester sheets, staring at the pile of my belongings. In architecture, we analyze the structural integrity of a building. If the foundation is compromised, the whole thing is a lie. As I sorted through my life, I started seeing the cracks. My laptop stand snapped. My winter coats soaked in red paint. My grandmother's velvet jewelry box. I opened it, hoping for the familiar weight of her gold filigree ring. Empty. That hit harder than the bullhorn. That ring wasn't just gold, it was a promise. By 3 a.m., the adrenaline had died, replaced by a cold, analytical clarity. My sister's livestream had already hit 10,000 views. The comments were a bloodbath. "Kick her out!" Entitled "Brat." "Tough love is necessary." I opened my laptop, the only thing I had managed to grab before it hit the concrete, and opened a file I had kept for years. expenses_Vance_household.xlsx. My mother, and Denise, always framed her demands as emergencies. "Elara, the HVAC is shot." "Elara, Brooke's tuition is short this semester." "Elara, your father's account is locked. We need to pay the property taxes today or we'll lose the house." I had treated these as family duty. But as I scrolled through 3 years of bank transfers, Venmo notes, and scanned receipts, the math started doing something terrifying. It wasn't just that I had contributed, it was that I had been the primary support beam for a house that was supposedly carrying me. The next morning, I called Reagan Cole. Reagan was an investigative producer for a local station, and the kind of friend who doesn't offer thoughts and prayers. She offers a shovel and a map. "Elara," she said, her voice cutting through my exhaustion, "save everything. Every post, every text, every sneer on that live stream. Your family didn't just humiliate you, they built a digital record of their own liability." She met me at a diner 2 hours later, sliding a cup of black coffee toward me. "Look at the video again," she whispered. "Minute 4:12. Your mother screams the exact number. $16,000. Why that specific number?" I looked at my spreadsheet. Over the last 36 months, the total I had transferred to Denise for emergencies was $16,042. She didn't pick a random number, I realized. I'm the coffee turning cold in my hand. She used the exact amount I gave them and reframed it as a debt I owed them. It's a psychological projection. She's turned my support into my sin. Reagan nodded. And that, my friend, is where the restoration begins. But you can't do this alone. You need an engineer. The engineer was her brother, Nathan Cole, a civil attorney who operated with the precision of a laser level. His office was quiet, dimly lit, bad lighting, which I noticed immediately, but his mind was brilliant. Nathan didn't look at me with pity. He looked at my documentation like a blueprint. In law, Elara, we have pain and we have leverage, Nathan said, leaning back. Your family gave you a lot of pain, but through their arrogance, they gave us the leverage. They went public. They made specific and verifiable claims of debt. If those claims are false, it's defamation, but it's what's under the floorboards that interests me. He spent 4 hours cross-referencing my bank statements with county records. That's when the first real explosion happened. Elara, Nathan said, his voice dropping an octave. Did you authorize a renovation for a detached workshop on your parents' property last year? No, my dad said they couldn't afford to fix the leaky roof, let alone a workshop. Nathan slid a document across the desk. It was a county permit. It bore my name, my work email address, and an electronic signature that looked just like mine. But it wasn't mine. Your mother didn't just take your money, Nathan said. It appears she's been using your credit identity and professional credentials to bypass permit fees and secure financing for improvements they told you they couldn't afford. My stomach dropped. I felt like I was standing in a building that was being demolished while I was still inside. Wait, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. Check the homeowner's insurance policy. We pulled the updated filing from 8 months ago. There I was, listed as a co-applicant and co-owner on a policy update I had never seen. Why? I whispered. Because, Nathan replied, you have a perfect credit score and a professional license. They weren't just kicking you out, Elara. They were offboarding you after they had finished harvesting your identity to rebuild their own failing kingdom. If we start this, Nathan warned, there is no going back to normal. This isn't a family spat. This is fraud. This is identity theft. This is a scorched earth legal battle. Once I send this preservation letter, the bank will be notified. The insurance company will be notified. Their refinance, which I suspect they are currently in the middle of, will freeze. Are you ready to be the one who pulls the trigger? I thought about the red paint. I thought about the bullhorn. I thought about my grandmother's missing ring. In my world, I said, if a structure is this rotten, you don't patch it. You tear it down to the studs and start over. Send the letter. The first letter was a preservation of evidence notice. It was a polite way of saying, we know what you did. Don't delete anything. We are coming. That night I sat in my motel room and watched my family's response. They didn't respond with fear. They responded with the same arrogance that had fueled the driveway incident. Denise posted a 1,000-word rant on Facebook about the betrayal of children who use legal threats to mask their own failures. My father, Grant, commented, honor thy father and mother. Some people prefer a lawyer over a conscience. Brooke posted a TikTok dancing to a song about toxic sisters, with the caption, when the leech tries to sue for being told to grow up. LOL. They thought they were winning the court of public opinion. They didn't realize they were just providing Nathan with more exhibits for the defamation suit. But as the likes and shares on their posts climbed into the thousands, I received a notification that made my blood run cold. It wasn't from a lawyer. It was from a private investigator Reagan had hired. Elara? The text read, you need to see where your tuition payments for Brooke actually went. It wasn't to a university. I stared at the screen. The rabbit hole was deeper than I ever imagined. The $16,000 was just the tip of the iceberg. My family hadn't just used me, they were running a sophisticated financial shell game, and I was the unwitting guarantor of their lies. And in exactly 7 days, they were hosting a community arts fundraiser at the Railway Hotel, the crowning jewel of Denise's social calendar, the place where her Mother of the Year mask was most polished. "Nathan," I called him at midnight, "I don't want a quiet settlement, I want a restoration. I want the truth to be as loud as that bullhorn." "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm an architectural lighting designer," I said, looking at the blueprint of the hotel ballroom on my screen. "I know exactly where to place the lights so everyone can see the cracks. They say sunlight is the best disinfectant. In my world of lighting design, it's the high CRI, color rendering index, that reveals the true texture of a surface." 7 days after my life was dumped on a driveway, I was about to turn the highest quality light onto my family's darkest secrets. The Railway Hotel was a temple of gold leaf and velvet. The air smelled of expensive perfume and the quiet desperation of people trying to look richer than they are. My mother, Denise, was in her element. She wore a navy sheath dress, the one that said, "I am a grieving but resilient mother." She was holding court near the chandelier, likely retelling the story of her deadbeat daughter to any donor who would listen. I walked in, not as a victim, but as the architect of their accountability. I wore the black blazer they hated, the one that made me look too ambitious. Nathan was 2 steps behind me, carrying a leather briefcases filled with what he called the truth. My mother saw me. Her smile didn't just drop, it disintegrated. "Elara?" she hissed, loud enough for the board members to turn. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here after the stress you've put this family through." My father, Grant, moved in like a bodyguard, and Brooke, true to form, had her phone up. She was live streaming again. She thought she was capturing my meltdown. She didn't realize she was filming her own family's funeral. "Denise," I said, my voice steady, calibrated. "I'm here to talk about the $16,000. You wanted the neighborhood to know, right? Well, let's make sure the donors know too." I didn't shout. Shouting is for people who don't have receipts. I took out a portable Bluetooth speaker, the kind we use for site inspections, and I synced my phone. The room went silent. I played the clip from Brooke's own live stream. My mother's voice, distorted by the bullhorn, echoed through the ballroom. "She owes us $16,000. She's a worthless leech." Then I held up the first board. It was a blown-up scan of a bank transfer. "October 14th, I read, $3,000 for the county property taxes you said were overdue. Here is the receipt from the county office. It was paid from my account, not yours." I flipped to the next one. "January 12th, $2,200 for the HVAC system. You told me the bank froze your account. Here is the invoice. My name is on the payer line." I went through them all. The roofing, the insurance premiums, Brooke's tuition balance. I did it with the cold precision of a lighting audit. "You didn't kick me out because I owed you money," I said, looking my mother directly in the eyes. "You kicked me out because I finally started asking to see the invoices. You realized the leech was starting to notice the blood on your teeth." Nathan stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice, which made it 10 times more terrifying. "For those of you on the board," Nathan said, "my name is Nathan Cole. I represent Ms. Vance. We have filed a formal inquiry into the unauthorized use of my client's professional credentials and signature on county permits and insurance filings related to the Vance property. We suggest this event proceed without the presence of individuals currently under investigation for financial fraud." The silence wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. It was the sound of a reputation hitting the floor and shattering. Revenge is a flash of light. Accountability is a slow burn. In the 3 days following the fundraiser, the world I had known for 28 years collapsed. It started with the Neighborhood Arts Board. They didn't just ask Denise to resign, they issued a statement distancing themselves from unethical conduct. Then the dental practice where my mother worked, a place that prided itself on family values, placed her on leave. Parents had seen the Bullhorn video. They didn't want the woman who screamed at her daughter at 6 p.m. cleaning their children's teeth at 9 a.m. My father's cabinet shop was next. 2 major commercial contracts were paused. In the business world, a man who can't be trusted by his own blood is a man who can't be trusted with a budget. But the most satisfying collapse was Brooke's. Her influencer brand was built on being the relatable, fun younger sister. When the internet saw her laughing while our mother painted my life red, the relatable tag vanished. Brands dropped her in 24 hours. Her comment section became a graveyard of, "How could you?" But then the calls started. 56 calls in 60 minutes. I didn't answer. I sat in my new studio, the one filled with warm, amber light, and I watched my phone vibrate across the desk. It looked like it was dying. "Mallory, pick up! The bank is calling. They're freezing the refinance." "Elara, your mother is having chest pains. How can you be so cruel?" "Answer us. You're destroying everything." Funny how family is only a sacred bond when the person you're hurting starts hitting back. The final meeting happened in Nathan's conference room. No gold leaf here, just cold, fluorescent light. My mother looked like a ghost. My father's arrogance had been replaced by a frantic, sweaty desperation. Brooke sat in the corner, her phone nowhere to be seen. She looked like she had finally realized that viral isn't always a good thing. "I'm not here to forgive you," I told them. "I'm here to sign the terms of your survival." The terms were simple: a public retraction, a repayment schedule, and a cease and desist on my life. My father tried one last time. "Elara, we're your parents. We made mistakes, but do you really want to see us lose the house? Over a misunderstanding?" I leaned forward. "It wasn't a misunderstanding when you bought the red paint, Dad. It wasn't a misunderstanding when you used my name to fix a house you were planning to kick me out of. You didn't lose the house because of me. You lost it the moment you decided I was a resource instead of a daughter." I walked out of that office and went straight to the theater site. It was late. The construction crew was gone. I stood in the center of the stage and turned on the cues I had designed. I watched the light climb the walls, highlighting the restored plaster, hiding the scars of 100 years of neglect. Restoration isn't about making something look new, it's about making it honest. My family is broken. Maybe it always was, and I was just the one holding the flashlight. But as I stood there in the quiet golden glow of my own work, I realized something. Blood makes you related, but respect makes you family. If you are watching this and you feel like the leech, the burden, or the disappointment in your own home, look at your receipts. Look at your truth. And remember, you don't need their permission to turn on the light. So if you were in that room, looking at the people who tried to bury you, would you have handed them a shovel, or would you have walked toward the exit? In my opinion, walking away wasn't the end of my story. It was the first time the design actually made sense.